Afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This public hearing by the Committee on Health, Tourism, Military Affairs, and Senior Citizens of Guam is hereby convened. The chairman, Senator Rodriguez, has requested that I facilitate the discussion on the proposed measure that is before the committee at this time. So I want to thank the good senator not only for having a public hearing on this measure, but allowing me to be able to help facilitate this discussion this morning. For public hearing notices and open government law requirements for the information of the public, they were sent out and given to the media and to stakeholders. The first notice was sent out on Wednesday, October 3rd, and the second notice on Friday, October 18th. And for the record, today is Thursday, October 11, 2018, and the time is 9 a.m. I do have several individuals who have signed in, and I will call your name, and as you come forward and take a seat at the table, if in fact you're going to be presenting oral testimony, I certainly invite you to share some of your comments on the proposed measure. But as you are taking your seats, I will read a statement on the proposed measure. Just for the information of the public, there is one item on the agenda, and that is Bill number 334, that's 34 COR, and it is relative to extending the timeline for obtaining exemptions and exceptions for social work licensure upon the promulgation and enactment of the rules and regulations. So if I can invite the following individuals who have signed up: Ms. Melissa Seguenza, Natasha Crisostomo, Peter Roberto, Ovita Perez, and I believe this is Alice Rosas. Please, if any of you are going to be providing oral testimony, I invite you to the front. On the measure, as the primary sponsor of this particular measure, I'd just like to read a statement. Hafaday and good morning, everyone. To members of the social work community and our social work professionals who could be here today to present your testimony on Bill 334, that's 34. And I also noticed that we have testimony from University of Guam students who are future social workers. Many of you in this room know what this legislation can do for our community. But for those in our listening audience who may not know, Guam was the last jurisdiction in the United States to enact legislation for the licensure of social workers with the Social Work Practice Act that was adopted 6 years ago. We have so many social work practitioners who are qualified to practice in our community, but have not had the mechanism to receive licensure because of some of the timelines presented with the current law. I introduced Bill 334, that's 34, that will help address the challenges that have prevented licensure and that will pave the way and expedite this process. Licensure is so critical as it sets the standards for what practitioners can or cannot do. Licensure ensures more trust and confidence in the practitioner you're receiving care from, and finally, licensure protects not just the professionals, but the consumers and employers. Thank you all again for presenting your testimonies this morning, and I look forward to hearing from all of you on the proposed measure. I just also would like to highlight that the committee has received testimony, and perhaps one or two of you may be here who will be reading your testimony, but from the following individuals: Genevieve Pantorilla, who is a senior in the Bachelor's of Social Work program at the University of Guam Division of Social Work; Sharon Park, also a senior in the same program; Rona Habus, I hope I announced that correctly. She's also a senior in the Bachelor's of Social Work program at the University of Guam Division of Social Work; Jenna Ariola, also again a senior within the same social work program. And then we also have written testimony from the members, seniors of the University of Guam Social Work Program, and the current officers of the Social Work Alliance, Student Alliance organization. And in conjunction with that, we do have written testimony, which I understand will be read in a few minutes, from the National Association of Social Workers, the Guam chapter. So as we proceed with testimonies, I'd like to recognize Senator Eugene Lee for joining us this morning. Thank you, Senator, for joining in this discussion. And if we can begin with Ms. Perez as the president of the Social Work association?
Actually, I'm the chapter manager for the NASW. I am also a psychiatric social worker with Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. The testimony that I'm going to be providing this morning is written by our president, Dr. Lisa Linda Natividad, who is not able to be here today. She sends her regrets and thanks. So it's going to be delivered by me. I will also be providing a written, I just haven't done so, but I will be sending that out via email. Okay. So buenas and half a day, honorable senators before us today. This testimony is presented on behalf of the National Association of Social Workers, NASW Guam Chapter. NASW is the largest membership organization of professional social workers in the world, with nearly 145,000 members. The size and diversity of NASW's membership are significant assets in the organization's advocacy efforts on behalf of social workers and the clients they serve. Social work efforts towards licensure began in the 1940s. Since then, NASW has worked to ensure that all states and territories have some level of licensure for social workers to seek legal recognition, protection, and reimbursement for services as in other professions. Guam was the last jurisdiction in the United States to enact legislation for the licensure of social workers with the passage of Social Work Practice Act in 2012. Social work licensure is necessary to ensure the protection of consumers by qualified and regulated professionals. In order to achieve this, NASW worked in collaboration with the late Senator Ben Pangilinan to pass the Social Work Practice Act in 2012. NASW thanks you for this opportunity to present testimony in support of Bill number 334-34 COR, introduced by Senator Frank Blas Uggan Jr., which seeks to amend the Social Work Practice Act or Statute 122317 and 122318 of Article 23, Chapter 12, Part 2, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to extending the timeline for obtaining exemptions and exceptions for social work licensure upon the promulgation and enactment of the rules and regulations. The intent of the bill is to extend the sunset provisions of the Social Work Practice Act, referred to as SWPA, SWPA, to 6 months of the promulgation of the rules and regulations. This amendment to SWPA is necessary so that, first, those seeking to obtain a certificate of exemption or whoever meets the conditions for an exception from licensure will be afforded a 6-month application period after the promulgation of the SWPA rules and regulations. At the time of the passage of the original SWPA in 2012, the law created 2 categories akin to grandfathering provisions that were called exemptions and exceptions. Since the passage of SWPA, there have been 2 amendments to the law. Somehow, the applicability of the exemptions category of the law became expired. As such, it is no longer an option for those wishing to obtain a certificate of exemption, which would allow them to continue to practice in their social work positions without obtaining a social work license. Those who were near retirement or for whatever reason only had a short time to practice on island primarily advocated for this option. Hence, the bill proposes to reinstate the exemption option into SWPA. The second thing that this bill aims to do is to extend the sunset provision of the exceptions and exemptions options to 6 months following the promulgation of the rules and regulations, as opposed to on the day of the promulgation of the rules and regulations. In the original version of SWPA, the sunset for the exemptions and exceptions options was 18 months following the signing of the bill into law. That was in 2012, and that was 6 years ago. The redefining of the sunset to 6 months following the promulgation of the rules and regulations provides a defined timeline for the application period for exemptions and exceptions. Hence, Bill number 334-34 will afford the Guam Social Work Board the opportunity to provide a definitive deadline for when the applications will be due. With the current provision of the law, there is no such defined date. Rather, the application form for exceptions will be released, and the deadline for such applications will be upon the promulgation of the rules and regulations by the Guam legislature. It goes without saying that the current process, as defined by law, will create chaos and havoc for those seeking out the 2 grandfathering provisions. Inevitably, there will be practicing social workers who will miss this deadline, and depending on their employer, may have devastating consequences on their employability. Bill 334-34 COR is an effort to avoid this situation. In closing, we urge all members of this esteemed body, Legislatura Guahan, to support Resolution 334-34 COR, which will reactivate the exemptions option and will extend the sunset to 6 months following the promulgation of the rules and regulations. These efforts will return to the original intent of the SWIPA as passed in 2012, and it will allow for a more systemic process in receiving the exemptions and exceptions applications. Si Zeus maasi para itempon mizu pago. Thank you all for your time. This, again, this testimony is prepared by our president, Dr. Lisa Linda Natividad.
Jesus Masi, thank you very much, Ms. Perez, for reading the testimony into the record and also clarifying the intent behind this and how it would resolve some of the current challenges. Thank you. Mr. Roberto, please.
Thank you, Senators. I'm here as a member of the NASW Guam chapter. I'm also a social worker for the past 30 years. And over the time, I believe that Guam has made a lot of progress in the practice of social work. And recognizing that since 2012, that was such a great move forward. And I realized that since that time, there have been challenges. But yet what I've also noted from the sidelines is that there's been a progressive movement to stay on track and move forward. And despite that, I think what this bill does, it continues the intent of what the Social Work Practice Act is, to also acknowledge the systematic issues affecting those in positions of social work, and at the same time setting forward what we want to do in actually establishing licensure, full licensure for social workers here on Guam. So I'm here this morning, Senators, supporting the NASW as well as supporting Bill 334-34, and that it be approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roberto. Ma'am?
Hafadang, good morning. Honorable Vice Speaker Talahi, Honorable Senator Uggan, and Honorable Senator Lee. My name is Latasha Marie Matinaran Crisostomo. Please allow me to read the testimony from the University of Guam's Social Work Student Alliance Council in support of Bill 334-34. We are seniors in the University of Guam Social Work Program and the current officers of the Social Work Student Alliance. We are writing in strong support of Bill number 334-34 to extend the timeline for obtaining exemptions and exceptions for social work licensure upon promulgation and enactment of the rules and regulations. In the current law, the deadline to apply is unclear. With the 6-month provision, at least the board will be able to determine a date and time the applications will be circulated. On behalf of future social workers and for those who have been working long-term in the social work field, we want to accentuate the vital role and the importance of social workers in our island's community. Their role primarily is to aid and support the needs of different populations in the community and to continue to strive for an improved outcome in people's lives. By supporting this bill, you will honor the work that long-term social workers in the community have done by giving them a clear opportunity to apply for exemptions and exceptions. The need for this licensure will ensure the protection for the consumers and employers, raising the standards for practice and the liability and trust for licensed social workers. With our graduation date closing in on May 2019, we, like all social workers on Guam, will be employed in Guam's social work field and fall into the exception category. This leaves us feeling uncertain about our future since we are still unable to obtain a social work license on Guam. With regulation, the goals of the Social Work Code of Ethics becomes a legal obligation and accountability for public protection. Licensed social workers hold themselves to a high standard of safe, competent, and ethical practice. It presents credibility to other professional social workers in other fields and creates trust amongst other licensed professions. We urge all members of Legislature en Guam to support Bill number 334-34. Undunklu Nasizos Maasi, signed Kelly Unshuk, Melissa Seguenza, Sharon Park, Evelyn Sabine, Genevieve Pentarilla, Natasha Crisostomo, and Christiana Gamboa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crisostomo, and please extend the appreciation of the Chair, Senator Rodriguez, and the committee members for the testimony by the Alliance Group. Thank you. Ma'am, if you can identify yourself for the record, please proceed.
Buenas, Vice Speaker Terlahi, Senator Frank Agun, Senator Regine Biscoe-Lee. Good morning. My name is Asia Ramos, and I am the chair of the Guam Social Work Board. And I'm here to provide testimony on the progress of the board and to give a little bit of feedback about how we see the potential amendment, the current law being introduced today affecting our work as a board. So I'll just read a statement that I prepared that gives a little bit of background on where we're at today. Excuse me. On behalf of the Guam Social Work Board, I am pleased to update you on the progress of the current board on the implementation of the Social Work Practice Act. The past year, the board members have focused on familiarizing ourselves with the parameters and mandates of the law, acclimating to our assigned roles, understanding our duties and responsibilities, and continuing to refine the rules and regulations. We're happy to report that we have made advancement toward our goal of creating the pathway for our island to have a body of licensed professional social workers. One of our first priorities was to complete the exceptions application and formalize the process for receiving and issuing these licenses. It's our pleasure to report that the final application is complete and was voted on at our last Guam Board of Social Work meeting on September 6, 2018. Excuse me. The requirements under this portion of the law and the application remain the same, and we announced that the time limit on issuing and applying for these licenses was in place. We distributed the licenses in a draft application to the National Association of Social Workers for feedback and for comment before it was passed. Our continued work goes beyond the exception application, although it was a great feat, and the Guam Board of Social Work will work concurrently to process the exception applications and finalize the rules and regulations. The bulk of the work ahead lies in this process. Once the rules and regulations are completed and adopted, Guam will have realized our full capacity to have a thriving community of licensed social workers. We thank the public and especially the social workers here on island for their continued perseverance and patience over the years, and please be assured that we are fully vested in accomplishing this milestone for our island and most importantly for the people and communities we serve. So we have a license application for the exceptions that addresses all levels of licensure at the bachelor's, master's, and clinical level. We've had a lot of discussions around the rollout of how we were going to do this and have been working with the Health Professional Licensing Office to nail down the logistics of issuing licenses, making sure that they're prepared to receive those licenses. We've coordinated a lot with the NASW to talk about the impact of the current bill in discussion, and our understanding of the law is that we, right now as it stands, have the ability to license social workers under the exception rule. Once the rules and regulations become in place, that window is gone. The interesting part is that the pace of which the rules and regulations come into place is really on us. So there is no definitive timeline for this. Our goal is to have it ready, hopefully before the end of the year, but setbacks and questions that arise and things that need to be clarified. There's a lot of research that goes into the rules and regulation, a lot of cross-referencing, looking at models across the nation, but I would say we're about 80% there. So it really is about our investment of time and energy towards that goal. Once those are in place under the current law, that window is gone for our social workers here to be grandfathered in, and everybody will be facing the same requirements in that they have to take the tests. A lot of people have to get documentation that dates back 20 years for some of our social workers out there. And so we have been coordinating with the NASW to really look at the impact, and we are following this very closely on how this will be rolled out because it will affect what we're doing. I think the thing to consider is a couple areas that we're looking at is that if you pass this bill, will it stop our ability now to roll out these licenses under exception? Because the rules and regulations are not in place yet. So if this bill says until the rules and regulations are in place, only then can exceptions be issued and looked at and applied for, then that sort of refocuses our energies and we will not be able to release those exception applications, which we're ready to do. Or will the window remain open now and then after the rules and regulations are in place, extend it out 6 months? So I think for us, that's the clarifying piece, and that's really been the challenge for us to understand what is the timeline and who's designated that and how does the law look at that. And so we've worked really closely with our lawyer to understand that. When in fact we were working very closely on the rules and regs and then realized, thanks to the NASW who brought it up, that once we get these in place, no one would have been licensed and that opportunity would have been gone. So those are some of the considerations that the board is faced and challenged with when thinking about and following what the outcome will be in this bill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ramos. Ms. Perez, Mr. Roberto, Ms. Crisostomo, and Ms. Ramos, thank you for your testimony this morning. Just in direct response to the inquiry or the question with regards to the timeline, if you read the verbiage, it says within 6 months of the promulgation of the rules and regulations. So the process would be able, the board would still be able to avail themselves of the exceptions clause until such time the rules and regulations are promulgated, and you stated that it's approximately 80% done. So once that's promulgated officially and is codified, then within 6 months, the exemption clause is disregarded. So it gives still opportunities for our social work students at the University of Guam to be able to receive the exception clause, whatever allowance that the board, the Guam Association of Social Workers and the board provides for interim service as a social worker, especially with a degree. I mean, to know and to hear that, in fact, our students are coming out of the University of Guam and they still need that additional certification. And I think that that's where we need to be able to figure out how the University of Guam, the program itself, can work more closely with the board so that, in fact, once they graduate within a reasonable time frame, they receive that certification and they can be assured, I have my degree, I passed all the certification requirements based on rules and regulations and the laws, and now I can literally go out and practice as a social worker and be recognized as an officially certified social worker. So it's taken a indirect approach in terms of the timelines, because the previous timelines were identified whereby within a certain amount before the promulgation of rules and regs. The Social Work Practice Act was passed in 2012. It's 2018. And we recognize, I mean, you've been providing members, the board has been providing members, and the Guam Association of Social Workers have been providing members of the legislature updates in terms of the process. But because it's taken this long Now this proposal would reverse it so that once you're done with the promulgation, and I hope the board doesn't look at this as an opportunity to delay the promulgation of rules and regs even further. But once you're done with the promulgation of rules and regs, then within 6 months, then the exemptions clause, everyone that is practicing today as a so-called social worker should be able to, after the rules and regs are adopted, should be able to step forward and say, I need an exemption, because this provides a certificate of exemption. The law reads, shall be effective indefinitely during the course of the person's professional career. So I would think that once the rules and regulations are promulgated, that individuals who are presently practicing and serving in the field of social work, and if they have complementary requirements or work experience that meets the exceptions clause, then they would have to go to the board and get that exceptions certificate within that 6 months after the promulgation of those rules and regs. So that's the intent behind this, so that we don't hinder the opportunities for individuals that come out of the University of Guam, or hinder the opportunities of individuals who are presently serving in the social work arena. So I hope that that clarifies the concern of the board, and I know you're seeking legal advice, so by all means, if you get that legal opinion, if you can share that with Senator Rodriguez and with the members of the committee, we certainly would appreciate it. But this just helps the process and makes sure that there's no impediments or challenges until such time that the rules and regs are officially adopted. Okay? Okay. Vice Speaker Talai, any questions?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your testimony. Testimony is very helpful, and I want to thank you especially, Natasha, and just I want to commend the social work students. They're always very involved and active on issues that the legislature is facing. So I want you to take that back with you and let them know that I'm very grateful that they are paying attention to this policy that's going to affect them and putting their input in. I hope that, I know I'm going to commend the professors up there at University of Guam and the social work organizations, because they've really done a great job of keeping everyone in the loop and informed. I know, Avita, you do that personally, and so I want to thank all of you for that. If I could ask you, Mr. Ramos, I'm glad to hear that the rules and regs are about 80%, you're saying now, so that's good. And but if you could just walk me through a couple of things here. So the exemption is a little bit different than the exceptions. The exemption is an indefinite throughout the course of the person's career exemption. So once you grant that, they hold it forever. And without this bill, it was supposed to be that you had to apply within 18 months of enactment of the law. When did that expire, the 18 months? Or has it expired? It's expired because it was years ago.
Expired, yeah. Yes.
All right, so there's been people who
2016
didn't meet that deadline, perhaps?
Correct.
Or people who have been employed as a non-social work degree holder, and we want to allow them to qualify. All right. So they are going to have a strict deadline after this bill of 6 months to apply. And anyone who misses that application is out of that exemption. So that's going to take a lot of education on your part, but I think you guys are all doing that already. Okay, so, but it's different from the exceptions. The exceptions sound like only temporary exceptions. Is that your understanding? And they only last for about 6 months.
So
6 months after the rules and regs are promulgated. So if you delay in promulgating the rules and regs, they'll last longer. I mean, from now forever. But once the rules and regs, up to 6 months, they have to go get a license.
Yes, yes. And so the biggest thing that distinguishes the exemptions from exceptions is that the exemptions really addresses the non-degree holders and provides them a certificate of exemption. There is a provision for the exceptions for the non-degree holders, but this is really the key, is that the exceptions provide a social work license. Right.
And so as a profession and across the nation, we have licensed social workers at various degrees and levels of practice who have a license that is recognized and standardized across the U.S. And so there are two provisions that protect non-degree holders.
Right.
One is a certificate that says because you're titled social worker, because you're in the capacity, you can stay in your job and continue to hold that title, and you're protected indefinitely. The other is saying for non-degree holders, you have the option because you've worked as a social worker, you're in that capacity to obtain a professional license. You are able to access the same types of privileges of having the license, including reimbursement for clinical services, all of the things that the NASW talked about validating our profession. And so those are the two differences between exemptions and exceptions when it comes to non-degree holders. And so they would apply, and then 6 months after that window would close, and then they would be subject to the same renewal processes as any license holder. So regardless if you are degree holder or non-degree holder, you would have the license and you would be up to the renewal standards just as any other, and they can maintain that license throughout their career.
Okay, yes, so that's my question. Then it comes to, so this is very good, especially for the graduates, right? You've got 6 months after the rules and regs are promulgated, but what if the rules and regs are promulgated tomorrow and graduation's in May? What happens to new graduates after 8 months after the rules and regs are promulgated?
Right. So the requirements for those who are just coming out of school, and really with the licensed bachelor social worker and the licensed master, is just that they have the degree. And that will remain in place, but after that 6-month window, after the rules are promulgated, they will have to have the degree and be subject to the national exam. That's the difference there. The licensed clinical social workers would, again, be subject to the same thing. They'd have to have their degree, earn a bunch of supervision hours and a lot of experience in the field to then go on to the clinical level, because that's the highest level of licensure. After the rules are in place, they have 6 months to get that license, not take the exam, but everybody, once those 6 months have closed, will be subject to the exam.
That's what I wanted to clarify, because on subsection D on page 4, it says all persons qualified for exceptions do not need to take the appropriate licensure examination. But must conform to all other levels of licensure. Okay, so is it correct to say that after the 6 months have closed, there really are no exceptions?
Yes, that would be correct to say.
All right then. Okay. And so the new students, they would have to take an exam. That would be the difference in prior graduates and new graduates. It's kind of like, okay, I can see that's consistent with other programs, but a little tougher. All right, well, I commend you for stepping up to that. That's very good. Well, I want to commend all of you for the work and the progress that you've made as a board and as an organizations and community members, and just the work that you've been doing for all these years.
Thank you. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to welcome you to the Guam Congress building, and it's very appropriate that we're here today as globally we are celebrating World Mental Health Day. And so it's great to have our social workers here in the House. We want to thank NASW certainly for stepping up and kind of, helping all of these years to, especially the Guam chapter, to move social work on our island forward. And I also want to acknowledge the Student Alliance from UOG. It's very important, as you guys will be pretty much the ones really affected by this piece of legislation, and certainly the Social Work Board. As I was reading through this bill, I noticed that when you compare this bill to measures that are in place in other states or other state proposals, the aim is just to allow for greater government flexibility in the delivery of services. And so we recognize that there is a tremendous need for social work throughout our community, whether it be child protective services, adult protective services, all across our community. There's certainly a need for this. And I think the trouble in not doing anything is that the lack of exemption or extension, it may lead us to potentially lay off professionals in this very much needed area. And also a concern of mine is, the potential loss of very culturally competent staff. And that's something, people who've been working in this field for many, many years, who have a very good understanding of our community and our community's needs. We need to make sure that we incentivize that and we support that. And I think also it could lead to a disruption of care for our patients and loss of services to clients. So, I really thank you very much for coming forward and in support of this bill. I do have one question. It's for you, Ms. Ramos, and I want to thank, again, the Social Work Board for updating the rules and regs. You said you're about 80% of the way done, and I know it takes a lot of work to kind of do that research and tie it to certain things and just make sure that we're doing our due diligence and crossing our T's, dotting our I's. You raised a concern about the grandfathering timeline, but my question to you is, in the review of this bill, the Bureau of Budget Management Research, BBMR, had stated that there is an opportunity for the government to earn licensure revenues. And so I kind of wanted to see, I don't know if you're there yet, but I wanted to see if you have an idea of what those established fees might be, because I'm very concerned that people coming right out of the university or other people in our community, other social work members might not be able to afford it if it's too high. So I just wanted to see if you had any feedback for the committee on an established license fee.
Sure. So in terms of the fee, currently as it stands, I reported to you that we have the applications ready to go to take our first wave of applications. So our understanding from our legal counsel is that until the rules and regulations are promulgated, we cannot collect fees. That's one. And so as we're issuing these first rounds of licenses under exceptions, we will not be collecting fees. The work of the fees, actually, that's one of the 20% of the work to be done is establishing the fees. We saw what was proposed by the former board and agree that it's exorbitantly high for our community. And so we're doing a cross-state analysis, looking up and down the West Coast, and then also identifying some rural areas where the profession is established and looking at their fees comparable to here on island as well. So that is part of the work in the rules and regulations that is targeted and one of the key issues that we're addressing. So right now there are no no fees set in place because we're still doing our research.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ramos, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senators, for your presence today. And once again, Ms. Crisostomo, Ms. Perez, Mr. Roberto, and Ms. Ramos, thank you for your testimony this morning. Just for the information of the committee and for the public, the committee will continue to receive written testimony subsequent to this particular hearing until the close of business next week, Friday, which is the 19th. Okay, but until the close of business on the 19th. So if the public would like to provide additional written testimony, please forward it to Senator Rodriguez's office. And as the primary sponsor of this legislation, I once again would like to extend my appreciation to Senator Rodriguez for expediting this particular hearing, and I certainly hope that we can get it on the docket as quickly as possible because it does affect the process today. So thank you very much again for your testimony. Have a good day, everyone.